Welcome to How to Beat the Difference with your hosts, Joanna and Paul. A podcast for the career you want, or maybe just that push you need. If you want to know what your dream career looks like, join us to get inspiration from industry experts that will make that dream career a reality.
Hello and welcome along to How to Beat the Difference with your hosts, Paul Lenski.
I'm Joanna Molina. How are you?
I'm very well, Joanna. How are you?
Very well, very well. Super excited about the guest we have today.
As always, yes, I'm very excited as well. And I'm excited for a different reason. And it's because of the story you told me about meeting this guest.
Yes. So I've met this gentleman about, 6 years ago. On my way to New York, I read his book, Dreaming of Hope Street, and I was crying the whole way. And when I got to this event, I remember just hugging him, hugging him and his wife. I was like, oh, it feels like I've known you forever and I just have to hug you. And you'll know why when you hear him later on. And
sorry, can we go back to the event that you met him at? So you came up to him at this event. You'd never met him before. You interrupted him and his wife to give him a hug.
Yes.
Wow.
And yes, and we became close after that. I think it's just very inspirational. You'll hear. It's just incredible, his story.
Excellent, Joanna. We'll take it away.
Absolutely, Paul. But before I introduce our guest, just quickly to everyone listening, if you like this podcast, please share, follow, review, tell us what you like, what you don't like, what would you like to see more. And now let's go to our guest today. Today we are with Eder Holguin. Eder is a serial entrepreneur, digital sales and marketing expert, and best-selling author. On this episode, you're going to see bookmarked his books, Dreaming of Hope Street and Street Smarts, The Business of Life. Eder has more than 20 years of industry expertise, helping companies scale revenue, optimize sales, marketing processes, and improve productivity. His clients range from brand name Fortune 500 companies to innovative startups. Eder has been a recipient of several awards, including 40 Under 40, Raising Latino Star, Technology Trendsetter Award, received a certificate of merit from the state of New York, and has been named one of the most influential marketing professionals by Inc. magazine. But that's not all. Wait for this. On a personal note, Eder's life story is one of the most inspirational journeys I've known. As a child, he left a frightening home life and lived homeless in the streets of Colombia, back when violence and drug lords ruled. His remarkable story details how he went from living on the streets to becoming a successful entrepreneur. Eder, I'm so happy and honored to have you here with us. How are you today and where in the world are you?
No, thank you so much for that intro. I'm going to make sure that you make all the intros wherever I go from now on. That was fantastic. I am doing great. I am getting over COVID. Unfortunately, spent the last week and a half with COVID, but I am making progress, feeling better. I am in my home in New York City. Thank you so much for inviting me and for having me. It's a pleasure to speak with both of you and share my story with all your audiences.
Yeah, thanks a million for joining us today, Eder, and I'm delighted to hear that you're getting over COVID. Would you be able to take us on that journey and tell us how you went from homelessness to being a successful entrepreneur in the US?
Yeah, absolutely. It's obviously a very long story, 360 something pages on a book that took me more than 3.5 years to put together. But the basics of it was, I left my home because I was a victim of abuse, like a lot of people. I have a mother who was sick. She suffered from alcoholism and she used drugs and other different things. So I run away from home to avoid all the physical and mental abuse. I lived in the streets of Medellín, Colombia during the 80s. And living in the streets, it was both a curse and a blessing. The curse, obviously, is because I saw a lot of horrible things that were happening during those times in Colombia, which it was a really difficult time for my city and my country. Um, the blessing came from the fact that I had to learn how to survive. And one of the things that I learned living in the streets was doing sales. As a teenager who doesn't have a driver's license, who doesn't have any, regular education at the time, the only thing I could really do to survive was to learn how to sell. And I sold items door to door, which included a lot of things, included cosmetics. I sold insurance. I sold all kinds of different products, which was a skill that allowed me to move forward in life. And it was the basics of all the other successes that came after that. So learning how to be a good salesman allowed me how to break out of that shell of communicating with people, being an efficient communicator and being able to speak in front of people, which later on, when I moved to the United States, it's really the vehicle that transformed my life. I started selling print media, I sold computers. And then when the internet, first time I saw the internet in the mid to late 90s, I knew that's what I wanted to do for a living. And I broke into that world by selling internet advertising. And the rest of history, after that, is pretty much what became my profession. But it was always based on that one single skill that I could leverage. And for anybody who's listening, I mean, if you learn how to sell, you're never going to be able to go into any other different field, because it's a great vehicle to move forward.
Yes, absolutely. I think you mentioned that a lot of different things we would love to maybe zoom in a bit. One is, let's go back to a moment. What was that moment when you realized that something had to change in your life? And in that moment, what were those skills? You mentioned sales, but in addition to sales, what were those skills or those tools that you used that were really instrumental in your change?
Yeah, so after I left home and I was living in the streets, I saw what life on the streets was like for a lot of people. I mean, the common denominator of people who lived in the streets is a lot of them had trauma and difficulties in their lives for a lot of different reasons, but a lot of them are settled in a daily routine, which includes either alcohol or drugs, is a way to numb the pain. It's a way to kind of go through it. And I saw myself, I was maybe 14, 15 years old. And I did not want to live that sort of life. So for me, it was more about, what do I really want to do? And what am I willing to do to get out of this situation? One of the things that I wanted to do was to move to the United States. My dad had left when I was probably about 7 or 8 years old. And I had lost touch with him. I had not contact with him. He moved to the United States when I was very young. When I started working, selling products on the street, I went to reconnect with him because I wanted to move here. I figure in the United States, I was going to be able to have more opportunity. And I felt that it would be a good future for me. So 2 things that I emphasized. One was learning English. So I started early on just reading and kind of doing my own little thing to learn the language, because I knew that was going to be important. And I knew that was going to play an important role in my life. So I needed to learn English. And the second thing was, I was very shy since I was a victim of abuse. I was afraid of speaking in front of people. I was very traumatized. So learning how to get out of that shell and how to put myself out there, I think the sales part was just a great vehicle to do that, because it forced me. At the end of the day, if I couldn't sell anything, I didn't have money to eat. I didn't have money to pay for a place to sleep. So it just really kind of made it a must for me to be able to develop that skill.
And in your journey as a successful entrepreneur, what are those habits that you constantly have been repeating that have also allowed you to become successful, and that you think you can replicate or share with our audience?
Sure. So one of the things that I always emphasize as a leader is being able to be a good leader to others. And I think that's been an important skill in life. When I started in this industry, I was just doing sales. And then as I moved up, I became a director of sales, then a vice president of sales. Eventually, I started my first company which was acquired by a larger business. And then I started my second company, which was also acquired. And I think a couple of things that I learned. One is building relationships and understanding something very important that a lot of entrepreneurs do not understand. I see myself as a professional problem solver. And I repeat this to my team again and again, because at the end of the day, an entrepreneur is just that, is someone who's looking for a problem to solve. So I hear a lot of people complaining about clients are so difficult and they're so problematic. And that's really the essence of being an entrepreneur. You find a big enough problem that you can solve with either your technology or your solution. And for me, it's always about opportunities on how to help clients and how to solve specific problems. So seeing yourself as a professional problem solver is going to save you a lot of headaches, and is going to put you in a different state of mind. What can I do to improve or help my clients succeed? Because at the end of the day, if you can do that and you can repeat that, then obviously that makes a big difference as an entrepreneur, and it will make you very successful. The second thing is being able to see trends. Things change dramatically. When I started in this business in digital marketing, there was no social media. Everything was email marketing and programmatic, which at the time was basically display advertising. Then programmatic platforms became a thing. Then social media platforms became a thing. And every couple of years, there's a new trend. Now it's crypto and NFTs. So you have to keep up with this. You have to be able to look at the trends and see when things are moving and be able to adapt quickly. So I think those two skill sets are very important. One is to see yourself as someone who can produce results for your clients and help them solve specific problems. And then the second one is be able to stay afloat and learn new things, because it's such a incredibly rapid changing world that you have to keep up with all the new technology that comes up, all the new platforms. So being able to look at those trends and see where things are moving. The pandemic, I've been talking about digital transformation for years, and I talked about companies needing to really have a great digital strategy in place. A lot of companies did that, and some companies are born digital, but a lot of the bigger, older companies, it took the pandemic for them to realize that they needed to have a real clear digital strategy in place. And a lot of them are still transforming their companies because it became a must. It became an absolute must for them.
Brilliant stuff. And Eder, just on that incredible journey that you took from crazy poverty and hopelessness, and you moved through, was there a time at all you stopped to take stock and say, yes, I'm going on the right path and this is working out for me? Or was it just on to the next thing and moving forward that way?
Yeah, it's interesting because, as you get older, your perspective in life changes. When I was in my early 20s, it was all about money, right? So my concept of success was just about money. If I had the nicest car and the big home and a lot of watches and motorcycles, it basically proved that I made it. It proved that I went from where I was to where I wanted to be. And that was the center of it. In my 30s, it became more about doing things that are bigger, that create a change in the world. It's more about building tools and things that will leave a legacy. Say, hey, I was able to accomplish this and do this. The money was not that important then. Now that I'm in my 40s, it's about giving back. It's about helping other people. It's about thinking about, how do I help others who are in the same situation that I was? I'm working on making this book into a film, and we have a proceed of all the sales from the book that go into charity to help people who are homeless, who went through a lot of the same things that I did. So your perspective in life changes, and success means different things. As a homeless kid, obviously my first sign of being able to take note and say that I had made it in life was about money, but then it became about contribution. It became about something bigger than just money. It became about this idea of hope. And the concept is, if you become something bigger than yourself and you embrace, for me, is about being able to accomplish things and prove to others that you can do it. So I want to be able to represent that. I want people to look at me, to read my story, hopefully see my movie when it comes out, and think about not this guy was amazing, but hey, there is hope and there is this transformation that can happen when you put your mind to it and you work really hard in life. And I think that's much important to me, for people to kind of embrace the concept of hope. That's such an important word in my mind and in my life, because it's really about that. It's about having hope. Sometimes we go through life and we have very difficult situations for any reason. Sometimes we're born in difficult situations. Sometimes we put ourselves in some of those situations. But the idea that there's always a better tomorrow and there's always hope is the most important thing for me to convey with everything that I do.
That's beautiful. Yes, it's really going to that survival mood and basic needs to now transcending. How did you do that? I mean, in a lot of people right now are feeling hopeless. What sort of, beyond the money, beyond the basic needs, as you said, if I didn't sell, you probably wouldn't have anything to eat. What was that force that was inspiring you to go further, to believe in yourself despite other people close to you not necessarily believing in you?
Yeah, it's tough, right? Yeah, we tend to get caught up on things, and there is one phrase that I learned a long time ago, which is "This too shall pass," and it's interesting because when you feel like you're in the top of the world and everything is great, you think about "this too shall pass," and it makes you sad because you don't want that to go away, but it will. It happens. And then when you're at the bottom, you obviously want that to pass quickly. And I think that's just the nature of life. Life is very we tend to focus very much on what is going on right now, but we sometimes underestimate what can be accomplished in 5 years or 10 years, and we lose vision of what can be done in that period of time. So here's the good news. We are living in such an incredible transformational society at this point. Everything is changing so quickly. Technology is, obviously our daily lives have changed because of this pandemic, but it has opened a lot of opportunities. If you think about the beginning of the all the industrialization era of new automobiles and factories, we're kind of going through the same thing with digital technology, with cryptocurrency. So there are a lot of great opportunities, and that opens opportunities for you to learn new skills, for you to kind of be able to start something relatively new that has a lot of potential. Cryptocurrency is growing so fast, so is digital marketing. So that opens up a lot of opportunities. And I think that the challenge is how to balance that. I need specific things right now to survive. Beyond that, start working on your dream. And I think that's a good way to think about it. One way is to think about, I do what I must do right now to survive. And that can be your 9-to-5 job. It can be something that may not necessarily be your dream, but it helps you paying the bills, putting food on the table. And then that part-time, that weekends or nights, is devoted to building your dream, to kind of start working on something much bigger that may take a couple of years until you're able to support yourself and that vision grows into something much larger.
I love that. Start a side hustle while you're doing your normal 9-to-5 job. That's amazing advice. Can I just ask real quick about trends? You said you picked up on trends from an early enough age. Like, where did that come from, and what new trends do you see? You mentioned digital currency and the more technology which is coming into the world today.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this has to do with my love for movies, I guess. When I was a kid, I always used to watch movies and science fiction, and I always thought about all these amazing things that were happening, and traveling to space and doing all these crazy things. And the reality is, a lot of those things that we saw as kids in the 70s or 80s are things that are real now. A lot of these things that you will see in science fiction shows in the 70s and 80s, I think the kids that grew up watching those shows eventually ended up inventing a lot of the same things that you see. And now all those things seem a lot more realistic than they did back in the day. So I think part of it is that, being a little bit of a dreamer. I have always been that. And kind of thinking about things in my mind. When I said I need to learn English, it never occurred to me that it would be difficult, that I was not going to be able to do it on my own. it was just, okay, I need to do it. What do I need to do? I'm going to read. I need to do X, Y, and Z. And I always kind of believe that if I put my mind into doing something, that eventually it will happen. I never really doubted myself too much. So I think part of seeing trend is looking at what's going on and kind of being up to date, reading, obviously staying up to date on what's going on in technology. And that opens up opportunities. If you think about cryptocurrency right now, all the bigger investors and even the bigger companies are getting into cryptocurrency. There are opportunities for jobs for people who do marketing in that specific field, for interns that want to go into finance, because that's going to transform that field for sure. Same thing with digital marketing, same thing with a lot of the things that we see today. And those trends will continue to happen. The legalization of CBD or cannabis. Soon it will be psychedelics, which is probably the next thing they're going to start, selling, and it will become another source of revenue for states and companies that want to go into that particular direction. So there's so many different things going on right now that it's hard to stay focused on one thing. But I think, like I said before, it opens up a lot of opportunities for people who are thinking about what's next in our society.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned a bit in the previous two questions about the concept of really abundance. I think it reminded me of the book from Peter Diamandis, Abundance, when he says that truly we're experiencing a world as abundant as ever, but because also the social media, we have the capacity of seeing all the problems as well that we couldn't in the past. But then this leads me to a question to you more into the marketing and sales expertise. You advise a lot of companies from startups to Fortune 500s. What are the common principles of marketing and sales?
Well, the common denominator is always the same, right? It's all about providing the right message to the right audience using the right advertising vehicle. The challenge is, as simple as that sounds, it is not very simple. Most companies do not understand who their perfect audience is. So that creates, right off the gate, it creates a problem. So understanding and aligning those things, right? Having the right message, what is the right value proposition for the brand, who is the right audience, and what is the right advertising vehicle to deliver that message. When you kind of begin to put all those pieces together, you realize audiences are segmented. There's so many different channels of communication. You have email marketing, you have SEO, you have social media platforms, you have television, newspapers. There's all these different things. So kind of narrowing down everything to the basics is really kind of the common denominator of both sales and marketing, which is understanding, what is that your product or service, what is the problem that is solving? Who is the right audience that you want to communicate this with? What is the simple message that you can use, the right advertising vehicle, and the right time to deliver that message? Once you begin to kind of put all these different pieces together and you begin to see the misalignments, that's when you have an aha moment and you think, oh, we're trying to sell this to the wrong audience. And you'll be surprised. Large companies that I have conversations with, and I show them who their followers are in social media, or I show them people who are responding to their ads, and they never thought there would be an audience for them. And sometimes you discover new audiences as you go through these processes. You discover that there are certain groups of people that are actually really interested in your product that you never thought of them as your ideal audience. Same thing with different platforms. Since there's so many platforms now, there's a new social media platform every couple of years. There's all these different ways of communicating. Knowing how to use those platforms and how to use them to communicate with your audiences in an effective manner are kind of the common ways of solving these issues with marketing and aligning both the concept of sales and marketing together.
Really good one. And then going back to, the beginning of your story, you said it's all about sales skills. And a lot of our audience is at university and probably not necessarily being told and learning about sales. What would be your advice for them? How do you improve your sales skills? Because I know a lot of people, sometimes myself as well, I'm not really good at selling. How do you encourage that? How do you train those skills, which are fundamental? I agree with you, for any success in any career.
Yeah, listen, I think we're all selling ourselves all the time. We sell ourselves to our significant others when we're dating. We try to convince them we're the right choice. We sell ourselves to our friends, our ideas to other people. We sell them in the movies that we liked. We sell them on things that we believe are great for them. So it's a normal part of life. I think the difference is learning a different skill set, which is more about open communication and listening. When I was growing up, the whole idea of being a good salesman is someone who could talk a lot, and everyone that could really just talk for a long time nonstop, everybody thought, oh, he's going to be a good salesman. And I think that has shifted a lot. I think it's more about listening with intent and learning how to listen for specific things, which is really the basics of what I mentioned earlier about being a professional problem solver. When you're listening to clients, to prospects, to people that you want to do business with, it's all about identifying those specific problems and thinking about, can I offer a solution? The truth is sometimes it may not be the case, and you may be like, oh, that's great, but unfortunately, I'm not going to be the person who can help you. But when you listen with intent and you begin to understand that, that's really the basics of providing a solution for someone. And that's the basics of being a good salesperson. It's more about leading the conversation, listening, and learning how to uncover specific needs, because that's how you realize, can I offer a solution to this person? Yes or no? Are we aligned in terms of everything pertaining timelines or money or the scope of the work that needs to be done, or whatever the case may be? But it's all about that level of communication when you open yourself to kind of understand their needs and their potential problems, and then seeing how you can provide a solution to them.
Amazing. You've worked with a lot. You've advised a lot of companies from startups to Fortune 500s, and you've been involved in lots of different businesses and talks and advisory roles and all sorts of stuff. Eder, is there a moment that stands out to you as the proudest?
That's a great question. No, I think proud moments in my life are more on a personal level. I think a lot of the different things that have to do with awards or corporate accolades, I don't think that's really, I guess it speaks of my capacity to do certain things, but I think on a personal level, it's really about growth. It's about transcending those things and becoming not only a source of inspiration for other people, but a resource to help others in a much more meaningful way. I think that's a lot more important to me now than anything else.
Brilliant. That's absolutely amazing answer, and helping people stands out by far. And I suppose Joanna slightly touched on it earlier on, and I suppose it's the uncertain future for a lot of people listening post pandemic. Is there any kind of wisdom you could share with them?
Yeah, I think the wisdom I can share with everybody here is become a much larger solution for others and a source of support. I think that makes a big difference. Even in business, I talk to a lot of investors and companies, and a lot of times they just call me for advice. Hey, can I pick your brain on certain thing? Or, can you help me connect with a certain person, do something? Once you become kind of on a different mindset of helping others and doing it on a larger scale, I think you really become that source of help that people are looking for. And I think that goes beyond just your skill set of doing specific things. And I think that's great advice. I wish I would have known that earlier on, but I think I'm at that point now that people look for me or call me because they want specific advice on certain things. Not everything is a deal. Not everything has to do a contract, or not everything is an opportunity as a business opportunity, but a lot of it is just kind of building your network at a larger scale and becoming that expert, that person that others can trust.
And that's beautiful. That's beautiful. We were talking about this in a previous episode about volunteering and the power of that to help you build your network, interact with people from different backgrounds, and on a similar level, internships. So a lot of our audience are probably thinking about doing an internship or are currently doing an internship. What's your opinion on that, on having experiential learning?
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I like it a lot. I like to have interns on board in every company that I built. I think at some point we have probably about 10 of them in my previous company. And it's a great way for them to learn and to be around people who can teach them a lot of things, but it's also a great way for someone like me to find new talent. Because it becomes very clear, you have these interns and there's always that one super rock star that you really like from day one. And you think, this is the person I want to make sure once they finish whatever they're doing, I want to give them a full-time position. I want them to come with me. I have 2 people in my team today that have been with me for probably about 10 years, and we've been through 3 or 4 different companies, and they have followed me one company after the next because they started off as my first employees 10 years ago, and we became friends and we learned how to work together. And every time one of my companies was acquired or one of my companies went in a different direction, they followed me into my next venture and so on and so forth. And I have a couple of them that have been with me for more than 10 years. And I think it starts with that. It starts with having someone like an intern, someone that can learn from scratch and kind of begin to learn how you operate, how you work. It's such a great thing. I never had a chance to have an internship when I was younger, but I think it's brilliant. I love what you guys do.
Amazing. And having people following you from one company to the next speaks for your leadership style. Definitely. Eder, what's next for you? You mentioned that you are currently working on a film. What can you tell us? What's your next challenge?
So the company that I have today, we're reinventing performance marketing. We're kind of combining all these different things, which include programmatic, it includes affiliate marketing, it includes some other different channels, and we're building this very interesting platform. Ideally, this will be a company that I can exit in a couple of years or that we can take public. We'll see how that goes. And next for me, I want to finish this film. I want to do this film. I really want to do this. The challenge has been just like writing a book. It took me 3.5 years to kind of get it published and get it done. Same thing with a film. It's very time consuming. It's a full-time job. You really have to be completely involved hands-on, and I don't have the time to do that right now. So that's something I want to do. And one of my biggest passions is horses. We own horses, and I grew up around horses. I love horses. So I think at some point, move out of New York, maybe buy a ranch. Who knows? Maybe I'll go back to Colombia or, I don't know, Texas. I don't know. Get a ranch and start breeding horses and having a huge ranch with horses. I think that would be kind of a nice retirement or semi-retirement for someone like me.
I love it. That's the dream, and we're really looking forward to hopefully you get that movie out soon and we can check it out. But Eder, thanks so much for being our guest today. It's been absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it. I appreciate your time and all the insights and the great questions.
Wow. Okay. So that was our friend Eder. What do you think?
Yeah, it was a fascinating story, and I know you know the story and you've read the book, but it was really interesting for me speaking to him. Just, I mean, to go from that level of poverty, that level of nothing, and to then be sitting in the States and to have this successful kind of career built for himself that he made from scratch was really inspiring. And I couldn't believe actually how important sales were to his life, and I suppose it's something that we can all take from it.
Absolutely. I think it's a core skill that we should all learn, practice right now. I mean, when we first started recording, he told us he was just recently recovering from COVID. So amazing that we actually were able to have him on the podcast. And I don't know, I think it really struck me the fact that there's a lot of compassion in this man from the moment that he expresses about his mother to a massive lack of self-pity, where in situations like his situation, you can feel a victim, but he doesn't feel a victim. He's actually going from that to the creator of his own reality. So that was very inspiring for me, and I hope everyone enjoyed it as much as we did.
And you can get this at howtobeatthedifference at theinterngroup.com, or you can let us know what you thought on social media at the Intern Group. And until next time.
Until next time, see you soon. Please review us and follow us.
Thanks. Good luck.